Okay, so Asus announced a bunch of new devices, but I requested 2 of them to be sent here. Some pre-production units of the devices that I thought were most interesting. So first up is the StudioBook 16. This is the one I'm personally most interested in. It's probably gonna be the device that I end up buying. Like, this is a very interesting device to me. And then there's also the VivoBook. This is a slightly more inexpensive version of the StudioBook. But let's start off with the StudioBook. So, what makes this thing special? This is, I mean, it's the best of both worlds. It's an amazing gaming laptop. It's pretty thin, it's got powerful components, it's got a high refresh 16-inch panel. That's all the stuff you'd expect on a high-end gaming laptop, right? But it's also arguably the best content creation laptop you can get right now. It's got a super fast SD card reader. It also has the availability of an OLED panel. This one isn't it, I'll show it to you in a second, but there is a 3rd generation OLED panel from Samsung, which looks really nice, but there's also this jog dial, and this is something else. So when I first saw pictures of this, there's a couple things that ran through my mind. Like, number one, how useful is that really? But 2, doesn't this just get in the way? Like, this is right in the middle of where you would place your wrist when you're using the device. And well, to answer that question, no, because they've done this in a really smart way. So they've sunken it into the device. Like, it doesn't protrude. It actually sits flush with the keyboard deck. It's actually slightly below the keyboard deck, so that when you close it, like if I close the lid on this device, it doesn't hit the screen. That'd be stupid if they built it like that. But yeah, it was a concern I had, like, how does it work? And it's just because it's sunken in, it feels like it protrudes. Like, when you use it, it feels like a regular dial that sticks off of a surface, but it doesn't. And when you want to use it, you place your hands there, and it's exactly where you'd want a dial to be. Now, the idea of a dial isn't new, right? We've seen other laptops before where they had like a volume dial, and the ability to control volume with like a tactile dial is nice, right? It has a nice feeling to it, but this ain't no volume dial. This is on a whole new level. So this is built as a Microsoft wheel device, like the Surface dial. So it has excellent Windows support and integration and a ton of functionality because Asus has added custom software and customizable controls to do a lot of stuff with this dial. So you have your basic controls like volume and brightness controls that are built right into the desktop, but within custom apps like creative apps from Adobe, you have custom controls where you can tweak things like in Premiere, you can manipulate your timeline. In Photoshop, you can adjust your brushes, you can adjust the layers, you can do so much stuff without taking your hands off the keyboard. And that's the key, right? Obviously there's hotkeys and you can click stuff with your mouse, but the idea being your hand is on the keyboard already, and without moving anything around or even moving your mouse cursor away from whatever it is that you're working on, you can adjust stuff. And for me, because I've been video editing, that's what I've been doing with it, it's just really nice. Now, I've been using this third-party tool. It's made by a company called Monogram, or they used to be called Palette, and it's basically like a jog dial with a whole bunch of other controls that I use to manipulate things in my video editing program, right, in Premiere. But to have it built into the laptop, and not just built into the laptop on the side where you have to like reach over to get it. This is in front of you in the exact position that your hand is already in. And even in games, the ability to control your volume on the fly without removing your hands from the WASD keys or moving your mouse anywhere, like you're in the middle of a match. You know, there's a guy around the corner. You just crank up your volume a little bit, you're listening for him. You can do that because it's right where your hand is. You don't have to move anything. It's just, you're zoned in, you get the kill, you lower the volume back. Okay, so the screens, there's 2 variants. This one is the IPS option. It's 16 inches, 1440p, 16:10 aspect ratio. It's a really nice screen. It's like a high refresh, gaming capable screen. But if you want the best of the best, if you want like the best viewing experience, you want a super color accurate and very vibrant viewing experience, they have an OLED panel. It's the same size, 16 inches, also 16:10, but it's 4K, it's HDR, it's super color accurate, super bright, super colorful. It's a fantastic panel. Now, this is the 3rd generation of OLED tech for laptops from Samsung. We've seen the 1st and 2nd in previous devices I've covered. And in the past, one of the biggest issues I've seen when it comes to OLED screens is color accuracy as the brightness fluctuates. So the way that I've noticed OLED panels in the past is you have to dial in your color accuracy at a specific brightness that you're going to be working at. And it's usually like, you know, let's say 300 nits, right? You set it at that. But then the moment you increase that brightness to, let's say, 350 or 400, or you drop the brightness, the color accuracy drops drastically. That's no longer the case. Now inside we're looking at AMD 5000 series CPUs with an RTX 3070 GPU. It's loaded with very powerful components and a fairly large 90 watt-hour battery, but because these are pre-production units, I don't feel right doing, proper testing on it. I feel like any kind of numbers with battery life or even performance is probably not accurate of the retail product. So I'll wait until the retail units come in for a proper review of it, but it's very promising. And the thermal system, from what I'm seeing, is more than adequate for the stuff that's inside here. A quick note about the inputs. So there's a number pad on the keyboard for the people that need it, but there's also a third button on the trackpad. And it's something like if you've ever messed with CAD programs, you use that third button often, right? And if you have a mouse, sure, no problem. But if you're in a pinch, third mouse button. It's pretty nice. Okay, ports real quick before I wrap this one up. The real port of note is the super fast SD card reader. Like, I think it does almost a gigabyte per second. And that is the StudioBook 16. Love this thing. Okay, if you're on a tighter budget, because I believe this thing's gonna go for, I think it's a little bit less than 2,000 at launch, but we'll see. Okay, this guy, VivoBook. So this one, tried to open it the wrong way. This one does not have the dial, right? At least not a visible dial, but it does have a digital dial. And this is cool. Now to activate it, you pull down from the top right and it'll illuminate and you can control it with your finger. Now in this dial, it works in a very similar fashion to that physical dial that we saw previously, but it's all done through the software and gestures, and it's very responsive. I didn't think it would be. Like when you control it around, like you can see there's very little lag on the integration part, but even like getting look how quickly this is coming on and off the screen. Like you want it on, it's there. You want it off, it's gone. It's super, super responsive, and it's really well done. I would say that if this tech could be implemented into all of their trackpads, it would be amazing, because I feel like the dial is that useful. The other version, it's cool, but because you gotta like carve metal out and fit it in physically, it's a lot more complex. But this, maybe they could just do this with all of their trackpads in the future. I think this is a really nice implementation and something that almost everyone's gonna find useful. The ability to control stuff without taking your hand off of your keyboard. It's cool. Okay, so this device is a little bit less expensive because it does not have the fastest GPU. It's running a 3050 Ti, capable, but if you're running some high-end stuff, you're probably gonna want a more powerful GPU, which is why the StudioBook is available. But this is a really solid device with the fantastic 16-inch OLED screen available as an option. Now, the port selection isn't as robust as the StudioBook. Like the SD card reader is like a micro SD, and it's just overall just not as high-end. But if you're looking for something at a lower price point, because I believe these start at $1,400 if I'm not mistaken. These are really good value in my opinion, but these are awesome devices for creators, and those dials are super cool. I actually hope that they implement the trackpad version in all of their future devices. I think everyone would appreciate it. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see you guys next time.